Structural reform, structural reform. They say the most important thing should be emphasized 3 times. We just did that. But this time, it is the very first time it is being used in China's agricultural development. Exactly what it means, Holly.
Structural reform, Chinese agriculture overall, the supply is not oversupplied, unlike the manufacturing industry. However, the distribution of resources like land and water and capitals is not exactly balanced or meeting the demand of consumers. So that there are a lot of things to do to distribute the different resources.
I see. Do you agree with what Holly said, Yang?
I think nowadays our agriculture are meeting lots of challenges like resources, pollution, and also people, especially the middle class people in the city, they want healthy food. So I think that driving the demands and also the structural change. If we can produce more food, while at the same time we have to guarantee the food safety and the agriculture sustainability.
Right. So the structural reform we are talking about here when we talk China's rural development out of this conference is actually not necessarily about overcapacity. It is more about how to allocate the right resources for the right direction of development. But how?
I think now...
I'm sorry I throw you a big question, but that has to be asked. Yan.
I think the most important thing is how, if we could have the farmers, the peasants, can they organized as a real comprehensive cooperative? Because nowadays the cooperatives are mostly specialized cooperatives. So the farmers can only have like green cooperatives or grape cooperative, apple cooperatives, but can we allow them to do like financial cooperatives?
Financial cooperatives meaning what?
So that meaning that they can be cooperative in all different fields. And also, can we allow the different interest groups, can the farmers also share the interest? That's most important.
That is a very fundamental question. After all, the farmers' population still occupy a huge percentage of the China's overall. So their livelihood really means a lot about the overall development of China. So Holly, what do you take of that?
I think that as an economist, I still believe that the market can play a bigger role in the reform, restructure. So actually, our policies are still very powerful. So government should think about a step down and or step backward a little bit and let the market to play its role. So let the market as an indication to allocate the resources. I think she just mentioned farm cooperatives. That's one measure, definitely. But there are many other ways.
Well, we're going to talk about the role of the market. It's going to be a big argument in terms of China's rural development. But for now, let me go to you, Mr. McArthur. Of course, you have been studying agricultural development in many countries and rural development. China is at this very unique stage, shall we say, of its rural development. Overall speaking, which stage is it from your perspective? And also the challenges facing China's agricultural development, solution this time being subscribed. Historically judging, is it really likely to work? Mr. McArthur.
Well, I think I'll defer to my Chinese colleagues on the specifics of the proposed reforms, but I would say that I think there are a couple of big picture points to just stress here. And one is that China is a very unique situation. Given the level of development of the country overall, it actually still has a pretty significant and large share of its population in the rural areas, and that's due to the history of the government's policies around migration and the hukou system from rural to urban areas. And so the labor markets are actually a huge piece of this. Roughly 50%, or actually I think the latest statistic is about 54% of China's population still lives in the rural areas. That's about the same, roughly 50%, as say a country like Ghana, which has a much lower GDP per capita. And so one of the big questions is how the markets work for people to move to equilibrate a little more the incomes. There's a second piece, which is about the productivity of the farms.
Right.
And there's a big debate in many countries about how to make sure it's not just the big farms, but also the small farms. This is where we see countries like Brazil. President Lula actually created a whole ministry to support small farmers along the big farmers. But then there's a third piece, which is what I would call the social services and the income services that are everything from the health and education services for the rural areas to also the credit, financing, and this area of the public investment matching with the private investment to boost the income support and increase risk-taking among farmers in a way that they don't have to carry too much risk, that there's insurance. All three of these need to be taken on at once.
It seems that many of the points you mentioned, Mr. McArthur, have been really at the center of debate here in China as well. Not just right now, but really for some years.
Exactly.
So that's why I want to come back to you, Yan, about exactly what is the role of the market. Because when we talk of the role of the market, let the market decide all the allocating of resources, let the market decide where the product would go, let the market decide what kind of crops the farmers would like to produce. But agriculture in countries do not work like that, just as Mr. McArthur mentioned. A lot of times, the government provides support and subsidies to agriculture as long as it's not for exports, not create unfair trade. And also a lot of times it has to look at the food security. And in China's case, it's probably even more because farmers occupy such a huge percentage of the overall population. So Yan, what exactly is the situation?
Because agriculture is not only an industry,
no.
It's providing public goods. So for agriculture, we usually we always talking about three-dimensional agriculture issues in China, and we always put farmers in the first.
What are the two other dimensions?
Farmers, village, and also agriculture. So three-dimensional agriculture issues, we always talking that in China. And when we're talking about market, you must have noticed that in recent years, every year we have some farmers, they overproduction and they can't sell their goods because they only know this year the market is good, so all the farmers grow the same varieties, and next year they will lose all the money. So if we only let the market decide, that's the reason why we saw lots of market failures, that farmers will not benefit from the market.
So what is the way out if that is the case?
Let the farmers organize. So the farmers knows what the market will be better to grow next year. So and also it should be decided by the demands. So the consumers, what the consumers needs, then the market, then the farmers grow.
But will the farmers, as Yan mentioned, Holly, once organized, be able to achieve the goals that she aspired them to do it?
There's a long way to go. Definitely education and improving the human resource quality of farmers. But I think for Chinese agriculture, there are two main conflicts here. One is the food security you mentioned. That is the overall supply and productivity. And another thing is increasing farmers' income. So unlike Ghana, that as Mr. McArthur just mentioned, China is already developing this situation that we have non-farm sector urbanization that attract a lot of rural laborers. And actually, Chinese farmers already migrant to workers are working on non-farm sectors. So for the farm, they demand a particular return to labor. So labor cost is already at that level.
That's right.
So this is connected to the supply side. We got to increase the productivity. So now, actually, there are several things the Chinese government already recognized they can go. One is relax the constraints on resource. Land is one thing, like allowing farmers to grow larger scale and allow the land rights.
Land is one thing. What are the others?
Others, finance. Rural finance, loan, and all of those are constrained. And other things, labor as well. So China, labor are free to move to cities to
yes,
work.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. The laborers are free to move, and we see its effect so far. In fact, China is a nation with rapid urbanization.
Yep.
More Chinese farmers get their income elsewhere from their land. Take a look at some of the statistics we have for you. Only 20 out of 100 yuan made by Chinese farmers these days is from agriculture. The average land managed by each farmer has decreased from 10 mu, which is a Chinese way of calculating it, over 6,000 square meters, to 5 mu in 2016, agricultural population makes up to 28% of the nation's whole, contributing only though 9% of the GDP. I think there's one thing we should talk about, which is the plus side. That is, farmers has more ways to make a living. But on the other hand, who is going to be responsible for the farming itself? And can farmer come back, still have their land? That is the key issue here. So, Yan, I know you've been doing a lot of research about that. You are now living in China's rural area, despite the fact that you're a doctor degree intellectual. So help us to understand what exactly is the situation. Is this land reform now we're talking about out of this conference likely to change the overall picture?
Just like what we have seen in last 10 years, a lot of people, they come, especially some people with capital, they come to the rural, to the village, they rent a lot of land. But what I have seen, people who have succeeded in managing agriculture or managing their farm are very few people. So a lot of land, actually, people, some companies, they rent the land, but they don't know how to manage, how to sell the products. So that's the problem.
The question, I think, it seems, is when the land has more freedom to move around, will farmers really benefit from it? Because after all, that's what we're talking about here. It's not supposed to benefit the real estate economy, but rather the farmers themselves. What do you say, Holly?
China's agricultural reform started when the land ownership and land contracting rights separated. Now it's the new wave of land reform, separation of land contracting right and operating right. So farmers can still own the land, well, in the sense, can still have the contracting right, but they are not necessarily the operator or the manager of the land. So we're looking for some professionals like Dr. Tian and Dr. Shi, that to be the professional farm managers. So farmer can have different ways of still owning the land while hiring professionals. Farmers co-op is one thing. They can form a cooperation.
And there are other options for them?
Some of them will grow, become very capable managers themselves.
Well, let me ask you, Mr. McArthur, I'm sure the debates you have just heard also typical in some other economies, but China's scale we are talking about is very different. Therefore, how to make sure central planned economy, now to a more market-oriented, but at the same time, farmers' rights has to be guaranteed. At the same time, food security has to be guaranteed. All of these tasks juggling. Mr. McArthur.
You're exactly right. And I think, again, big picture, one of the things we have to keep in mind is that over time, most societies see people move from rural farm areas to cities. So in the most advanced economies in the world, maybe only 10% of the people still live on farms. And that's because over the generations, they sell their land, someone else comes in and invests in that land, they make more money in the city, they buy the food from the farmers in the rural area, and over time, those markets help to balance things out. So what we're talking about isn't a farmer at one point in time, we're talking about societies moving from farming to more urban-based economies and building the productivity at the farms to feed the people in the cities. Now, the big piece of this that's sensitive, of course, in every country, and every country has its own approach to it, is land and food. These are very emotional topics. They're very politically sensitive topics. Who owns the land? How do we manage land? How do we ensure food safety? Many countries actually like to export food to get income so that they can make the most of what they're really good at, but then spend it on other things.
So those are
other countries want to make sure that they have domestic food.
Those are certainly some of the solutions, but eventually what we are still talking about, like Mr. McArthur mentioned, two very key issues: land, which is the real resources, and the people, the farmers themselves. Final words from both of you. Where are we going? Yan.
I think because in China we are resource constrained and also so many populations. None of the country compare with China. So we really should be careful about the land reform and also farmers' rights.
Okay, Holly.
Legalize the separation between farm contracting right and farm operating right, and giving farmers who choose to live and work in cities equal rights as city urban citizens.